Welcome, everyone, to this month's Bloxcast. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Chris Millerick. I am the Vice President of Global Partner Sales here at Infoblox, and I am thrilled to have you with us today because we have a special Bloxcast. Our Bloxcast, as previewed, is all about unlocking opportunities and using the pain points of ransomware, phishing, zero trust, and some of the other industry buzzwords that you likely hear day in and day out as you're chatting with your customers, and actually associating that pain with Infoblox solutions. Because very excited here to introduce our special guest who's going to help you connect the dots between these words that you hear and the associations with how Infoblox's products can save the day. All right, without further ado, I would like to introduce Danelle Au. So Danelle is our Vice President of Product and Solution Marketing here at Infoblox. And she joined the company within this last year. She's been an absolute tremendous addition to our team, tremendous wealth of knowledge as an industry pro when it comes to cybersecurity. And so without a further ado, we're going to get right into how we will gamify a little cybersecurity buzzwords by playing word association. And Danelle, any thoughts here about our the game that we shall play? Are you excited to join us?
Yes, thanks for having me. I really enjoy all the word games I play today with my family, Wordle, Connections. And so, yes, I'm excited to be here today.
Here's what we'll start with. Phishing. So, Danelle, when a customer mentions phishing concerns, for many of our partners and for folks watching this Bloxcast, there's a whole host of security solutions that immediately come to mind. But, when I think about that, Infoblox may not be at the top of the list. And so let's just pause for a moment and get your perspective on when you think of phishing, now that you're here leading product and solutions marketing for Infoblox, what are the things that come to mind from an Infoblox perspective?
When a user's thinking about phishing, they're probably thinking getting a phishing email and, the threat actor getting you to click on a link and downloading that malware on your device. I think most people will focus on stopping those phishing emails via an email security solution, for example. But when we look at the landscape, there's now actually phishing, there's smishing, there's phishing, using obviously links in email messages, text messages to trick people into clicking on that malicious link. And so humans really are the weakest link today. And so whatever we're doing today isn't going to keep up with the evolution of the threat landscape, especially with AI. We know that threat actors are going to be able to craft better phishing emails. They're going to be using lookalike domains. And so that's really where I think Infoblox has a great play, right? With our DNS security, we are going to be able to inspect every single query, online query out to a malicious domain and make sure that we're proactively blocking even if the user clicks on it. So you may not be able to change the human behavior, but if you're blocking access to that malicious domain, then you've essentially are able to mitigate any risks from that phishing email.
All right. Well, I think maybe that is a new way to think about the word associations when it comes to phishing, and so for us, kind of just to build on that a little bit, particularly, not just what we think of when we think of phishing, but from an Infoblox perspective, how would a partner that's listening to this think about how we could help assist in that, getting ahead of that phishing?
Yeah.
By the way, I was going to say things like our takedown services, things like, again, opportunity to spot those lookalike domains that you mentioned, things like that. I'm curious kind of how we might share that back.
Yes. So we've got within the threat defense product, right, the ability to identify these lookalike domains. So we've got the malicious domains, obviously, but also lookalike domains, and especially for an organization, right? They can look at the variety of domains that sort of look like their specific domain, right? And which ones have been registered by threat actors, for example. And our takedown services allows our customers to actually use our services. We work with the registrars to actually take that down. So I think lookalike domains is definitely, one of the many capabilities that we offer, but very, very useful. I think I talked to a customer that had proactively registered 10,000 domains because they did not want a threat actor to use them. So that's certainly one strategy. Or the other strategy is to just use Infoblox, right, and threat defense. And when we identify those malicious domains to be and the lookalike domains, to be able to take it down with our services.
Oh, right on. That might be a little bit more cost effective than registering 10,000 domains. So
exactly.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's look at our next word association. All right. So now, when you think of the word ransomware, right, my question would be, what solutions come to mind when you think of ransomware? Our prospect brings up ransomware to you at one of our briefings or at one of our analyst conferences that you might be presenting at. How do you think about that? And by the way, does your response change if you're chatting with an IT director versus a CISO or a security analyst or somebody in the SOC? I'm curious how we'd think of that, because I know folks on the line typically, when they think ransomware or malware, they might think of products in the security framework that are trying to really go after the malware directly. And it might be a better, more complementary way.
Yes, when we think about existing solutions today, they're really focused on patient zero, right? There is some sort of infection that has already occurred, and that security solution is looking for evidence, trying to stop lateral movement. And so think of it in military term, right? It's right of boom, right? The compromise has happened and you're trying to limit the damage. You're trying to stop lateral movement. But when you think about the attacker breakout time, which is the time it takes a threat actor to move from their initial access point to another point in the network, another point deeper in the network, it's about 60 minutes. And so basically, the threat actor has moved to a deeper part of the network. And so just being able to react to the threat right of boom isn't enough. You've got to have an approach that's much more proactive. And so we talked about, from a ransomware perspective, previously we talked about the phishing attacks and stopping phishing attacks. But it's also looking, what Infoblox does, now Threat Intel does, is looking at the threat actor infrastructure. And they're very similar to any business in that they've got to set up the DNS infrastructure to serve the malware, to communicate to the malware, to do data exfiltration. And we've got all of that data to be able to tell whether a specific domain is going to be malicious or not, right, as it's registered by that threat actor. And so a lot of our ability to block is very proactive. And that allows us then to, I think we've shared some of these stats, Chris, which we're able to block 63 days, right, before any initial DNS query within the network. And most importantly, when we say a domain is malicious, it very likely is, because we have a 0.002% false positive rate. And so that allows our customers, when they think about ransomware, to have that balance of the proactive and also the reactive solutions. You really need both, and that's how they should be thinking about it. DNS security allows us to get ahead of that threat actor.
That's outstanding. That, by the way, that's also as I've had the chance to chat with many of our partners, maybe some that are watching this, is that almost you think in a home security scenario. It's like you're waiting for the bad guy to be in your living room before the alarm bells go off, right? And it's like, and at that point in time, you've made all these investments, but you still have to react, right? And it puts you in this reactive posture as opposed to being able to go, well, hang on a second. And again, carrying that analogy forward, what if there was somebody on the roof with a set of binoculars that could see that bad guy coming a mile away? Maybe you could do something about it before they're in your living room. And it's not to say that you don't want bars on the windows and your security alarms and all the attributes that you've invested in as a customer in the security apparatus. But I think if we look out in it seems like not a week goes by that you don't see 2, 3, 4 pretty significant breaches in the press. And those are just the ones we hear about. So we could probably got to at least acknowledge certainly on this call and with our folks watching here, our partners, we sell a lot of security stuff. If it was all working seamlessly, we wouldn't see the bad guys in the newspaper, right? And so there has to be a way to complement what people have already invested in that can put our customers for the first time on a footing where they can actually be proactive and can actually go hunt those threats as opposed to always being the hunted. So I think it's kind of an exciting time for us in terms of what we can do as we share and evangelize this message out with our customers and with our partners. So.
Yes. And there's also a huge advantage for all of the security solutions that the customers already invested in. If you're already blocked, and we know the data is about 92% of attacks up front, you're relieving the load. Maybe you don't need as big of a SASE or as big of a next-gen firewall because you've already blocked the majority of the malicious traffic up front. And so that's huge savings for the customer as well.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. I would imagine as well. It's like that all of the information that makes us so robust and powerful to be able to see across DNS, where all of this is being born out of, frankly, that data is probably pretty helpful to integrate into the rest of that security stack in terms of making them even better together. So and thankfully this is a topic in terms of better together that we've shared with folks in this community before. But again, it's great to be able to connect back, right? Ransomware specifically and unpack. Okay, maybe we start to change the word association when folks hear that term and they start to think about, wait a minute, there's something that I haven't been thinking about, and Infoblox actually is the key to it. All right, well, we're going to go on to our next word association. Now, this one is thrown around all the time. There are certain buzzwords that are throwaway in our cybersecurity world, and zero trust is one of them because it's been kicking around for a long time. And so the question is, when a customer asks you about what's Infoblox's zero trust strategy, or how do you fit into a zero trust framework as a customer, I'm adopting that. How do you think about answering that? Whether it's a networking, a security, a compliance focused conversation. I'm curious how you would address that.
Yeah, you're right. I think zero trust is definitely overused, has been over marketed. I would go back to the fundamental principles that John Kinnevar first put forth when he was at Forrester, the father of zero trust. Is you must assume a breach mindset, meaning that you don't trust, then verify. You never trust, you always verify. That means you inspect all your traffic and you're limiting access to least privilege, right? Meaning that a user should only have the minimum level of access that he or she needs to do his or her job. And similarly, on the assets and devices, what's the minimum that is needed for that device for it to function in its role? And so one of the fundamental principles of don't trust, always verify needs to extend to DNS. Every online connection starts with a DNS query. You need to be inspecting that traffic. And so you cannot just implicitly trust the domains your users are reaching out to. You should allow access to destinations that are legitimate, approved, and safe. And in fact, governments are already doing that. The UK government, for example, is doing it for their national health services and schools under the umbrella of protected DNS. And then, of course, within enterprises, we can implement DNS detection and response to inspect your DNS traffic. So I really see three phases of zero trust in the context of Infoblox. One is that inspection and securing access to malicious sites. The other is encryption. Encryption is also one of the fundamental principles of zero trust. Using DNS over TLS, DNS over HTTPS, known as dot or doe, it's a way to stop snooping or man-in-the-middle attacks. And then finally, for users, right, we can enable least privileged access for users. Are they allowed to access this specific site or not? When it comes to devices, similarly, this printer should only have access to these types of domains, these types of internal domains, right? There's ways for you to use DNS to actually align to the enterprise security policies.
Would it be fair to say that that perspective, for maybe some of the folks watching this, and certainly for the customers, probably feels like one of the best kept secrets in IT? I don't know that necessarily many folks, when they first hear zero trust associated with Infoblox, but it certainly sounds to me like we should certainly start to warm up that conversation, because we have a critical role to play to help enforce zero trust, kind of soup to nuts within the framework that it was designed to really inspire within companies when they think of their security posture.
Yes, definitely. And when we talked about ransomware, I was focused more on stopping that initial phishing link, right? But one of the ways to think about, also in the context of zero trust and inspection of traffic, is to be inspecting that C2 communications. When malware is first downloaded onto a device, it's usually very lightweight software because the threat actor is just trying to get it downloaded in an easy way. And it's looking for instructions from command and control. And that C2 communications is also where we can stop that communications using DNS. And that's, again, part of, if you think about zero trust, right? You're inspecting that DNS traffic. You're also inspecting and making sure that threat actors aren't using aren't exfiltrating data over DNS as well. And that's sort of that final face of the kill chain. So not only the initial queries, but C2 and data exfiltration, those are the three phases of the kill chain that you can break using DNS, aligns to your ransomware initiatives, aligns to your zero trust initiatives, and is really a great weapon for, you talk about like how do you pitch this at a CXO level, right? It becomes a very strategic initiative to look at it, right, from this DNS as a weapon that you can use to protect your organization, as this shield for not just users, but also devices. And no matter where they are, right, you can implement these policies no matter where you're sitting at the office, you're at Starbucks, you're at home, it's DNS. So it's, a much lightweight way to actually enable appropriate access and stop, malicious activity.
Yeah, it's an exciting role that I think we can play. And it's one that for many folks watching this Bloxcast, it's an opportunity for a fresh take on a conversation that's been happening really for a long time, right? Zero trust has been a buzzword in the industry for a long time. And that word association with zero trust typically wouldn't necessarily have led you to an Infoblox conversation in past, but it's absolutely an exciting opportunity for you if you lead that conversation with your customer. So, okay. All right. Well, so that's zero trust. Okay, good. We're making progress here. Let's think about data exfiltration.
We talked about data exfiltration. Great.
That's right. So data exfiltration. So I think it's interesting, particularly here, and I would ask you, many folks think that they're covered with the solutions they have today when it comes to data exfiltration. My understanding is that that is not the case. And I know that we've seen that within our own, with customers, or rather prospects that we talk to before they're Infoblox customers, and they might have a SASE solution. They may have something in the stack that they believe is covering them from data exfiltration, but not always so. So I'm curious, what should our partners be thinking of when they hear that word data exfiltration, and where can Infoblox kind of be a part of that conversation and potentially be the solution to that conversation?
Yeah, I would say put it to the test, right, in a POC, because we have third-party analyst firms that have tested Infoblox versus other competitive solutions. And we have shown how effective we are compared to other solutions. And you're right. I think the assumption is, it's checkbox, I've solved it, maybe in other solutions. But when you are in a POC, you can see that there's a vast difference between how we inspect and identify data exfiltration versus other security solutions, because I think it's a hard problem. And our engineering teams really invested a lot of resources in doing this, right? This is the final stage of the kill chain. It's so important because that's sort of that last defense, right? Before your data is taken by the threat actor. And we put a lot of work to make sure that we can really provide value to our customers. So for our partners, I would encourage them to show it in a POC, and then actually reach out to our teams, and they can share this Tolly report that has more details on this head-to-head analysis with other competitive solutions.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think that it's a great call out to the Tolly report. It's also a great call out to look and let us prove it, right? Ultimately, when you think about efficacy in this space, because it's a crowded market, there are a ton of solutions. There's a ton of noise in cybersecurity. But if I'm a partner watching this today, I want to be able to talk to my customer with credibility. Get credibility by being able to essentially put your money where your mouth is and prove it. And so, we believe, very firmly, not based on what we wish was happening, but what our customers who have acquired threat defense and have acquired our solutions, what they tell us happens when they've implemented. The opportunity for us to be able to stop data exfiltration, frankly, in many times when they thought prior to Infoblox that they had that covered. They had checked that box, to your point, Danelle. This isn't a checkbox game. The bad guys only have to be right once to create havoc inside your organization or inside your customer's organization. And so the reality of that is actually manifesting solutions that can stop each one of these on the roster of word associations we've talked about so far is so critical. And we should be comfortable, and you as our partners should be comfortable putting us to the test and making us prove it. And so thankfully, we have our data exfiltration demo capability that's available to all of you as partners. If you're a Sapphire partner and you have our lab, you can also engage with our teams to use this. I would say a combination of, the Tolly report that's downloadable right off of our site and in the partner portal as well. So you have access to that. But these are all kind of, I'm going to say, the leading questions that start to set up for you to ask your customer to do a security workshop, to take that time, right? Absolutely. And again, we have to help you in this to make sure that you feel comfortable asking for the investment of time to do a half-day security workshop, to get the right stakeholders in the room, and to actually, frankly, whether you play word association or not, but to address, just as we have here so far, how it is that Infoblox actually can be the answer to complement and complete what they've already invested in. But it's really important that they understand you're going to kind of fall in love with the problem a little bit to understand that you're not done. If you think that you've completed your journey from a security posture perspective and Infoblox isn't a part of your customer story, you're not done yet. They're not ready to call it a day. They need to look deeper in terms of where they're vulnerable. And each one of these is just an example of where they're vulnerable if Infoblox is not a part of the equation. So it's a really, the exfiltration one always, I think, is interesting because you're right, Danelle. It's always kind of that checkbox. The checkbox doesn't save you when you're in the middle of a breach. So
that's right.
So that little, 1 centimeter that you check, that doesn't cover the rest of you. So, all right. I think we've got time for one more word association. So, cyber resilience and business continuity in the age of Gen AI. Now, to be fair, this was more like phrase association because this was a long one. This was a whole bunch of words. But, I think when people say this, cyber resilience, our business continuity, and particularly as we talk about the age of Gen AI, like Gen AI is completely changing the threat landscape. Mm-hmm. But cyber resilience, man, there's a couple of dimensions to that. So I'm curious for your perspective, if you were chatting with a customer and they were concerned about their cyber resilience and their business continuity strategy, what kind of guidance would you give them as it relates to Infoblox and how we might be able to help?
Yeah, I think from a best practices perspective, it's important to ensure that they're not running all of their critical network services within the same server, right? I think what we saw with the CrowdStrike outage is that it didn't just impact users with their endpoints, right? Seeing issues with their endpoints, but it also impacted a lot of organizations that had Microsoft Active Directory domain controller running Microsoft DNS on the same server, right? And it's a Microsoft operating system. They had CrowdStrike agent on it to protect that server. But, when the update had issues, it impacted their entire organization. So fundamentally, right, it's important to look at the environment and just be implementing some of these best practices, right? Don't put all your critical network services eggs in the same basket, if you will. And obviously, we recommend that they separate it out and migrate from this free DNS services Microsoft towards Infoblox, right? And the other consideration also is that from a business continuity cyber resilience perspective is how you architect your DNS services to play that role during doing a cyber attack or doing some disaster recovery. So for example, how do you use DNS to switch to backup servers, to multiple servers or data centers, or even in the cloud environment, right? How do you architect it such that you can implement NIOSX as a service? And that might be a scalable, flexible disaster recovery option for DNS services. You might also, we've heard in healthcare environments where if it's a healthcare system with lots of hospitals that are potentially facing an attack, one of the hospitals is facing a ransomware attack, for example, you want to quickly isolate that hospital from the rest of the hospitals within that healthcare system. And so you want to essentially segment and isolate it, right? Again, you can do that using DNS. And so this word association, like there's so much to unpack, right? There's sort of the foundational, making sure you're following best practices. There's sort of using DNS within these architectures, segmentation, HA. So lots of things.
There's a ton on this one. To be honest with you, if you will grace us with your presence at a later time, I'd love to have you back on to specifically talk a little bit about the cyber resilience, business continuity, but particularly that context of Gen AI and thinking about the impact that that's going to have on not just, frankly, we talk about multi-cloud as expanding the attack surface, but Gen AI expanding the capabilities of a single attacker that can use essentially an agentic force to go out and create all these unique attacks. So now the trend line that other security apparatus uses to try to find the patterns, it's going to be hard to find the pattern when every attack is unique. And so how do you,
That's right.
I know that's one of the things for us that's hopefully should at least help our customers rest a little easier, is our ability to, not just have to, we don't look at the malware, we look at the essentially what it's coming in, what it's packaged in, what's the apparatus around it, and can we take that out in advance and not again have to wait until the bad guy's in our living room. So
yes, I think what we will see with AI, right, is no longer, just these variants, but it's like you're seeing every attack could potentially be a very unique attack targeted at that organization. So it's not just one patient zero, it's multiple patient zeros, right? All with its different nuances. You're not going to keep up with that AI. You've got to have a different approach. Our approach focusing on the threat actor infrastructure is the right one. And when you think about these attacks, right, at some point, any of these attacks are going to require some sort of access to a domain for the C2 or the data exfiltration, and that's another two ways that we can break that kill chain.
It's honestly, it's phenomenal insight. Thank you. So that, I regret to inform you, Bloxcast viewers, that brings us to the end of our word association game. But I've got to stop and take a moment, first of all, just to thank you, Danelle. Your insight, your expertise, and what you're able to share with this audience, and frankly, with myself and with my team, is always incredibly appreciated, incredibly insightful. So thank you for spending the time with us to play a little gamified approach to cybersecurity and a little word association. We absolutely would look forward to having you on again on a future Bloxcast, because I think this is hopefully, folks, this is the kind of content that brings you here to watch the Bloxcast, so you really can come away and feel like you've got a different kind of conversation, a new conversation you can have with your customers, a new way to differentiate yourself from other sellers that are out there. Essentially, maybe it's the partner down the street that's pitching firewalls or pitching, whatever it might be in the security stack. As an Infoblox partner, you're massively differentiated in the value that you can bring to not only complement, but complete that security strategy. And hopefully today, these word associations have changed a little bit for you, and you've got a new way to think about phishing and ransomware and zero trust and data exfiltration. And then that big old phrase we put on the bottom of the screen for cyber resilience and business continuity in the age of Gen AI. So again, I want to thank you so much, Danelle.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
No, thank you so much. All right. Well, I'm going to close as I always do with you, our valued and trusted partners. And first of all, not just thank you for taking the time with us today, but remind you that our commitment is truly based on the power of skill to secure. It's not just a partner program, but in many ways, it's the focus on competency unlocks confidence that puts you in a position to collaborate and win every single time. And so when we think about our commitment to you, it's to bring a profitable, predictable, and collaborative experience anytime you give us the opportunity to collaborate with you and one of your customers. And so we look forward to doing that a whole bunch in the year ahead. And with that, thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.